Grandma,
I,
listen, we're recording your life history here in Wyckoff, New Jersey, and it is September 27th, 1992. And at the request of Mark Cleveland, about a year ago, he has been asking us to film Grandma and have her talk about her life history. So we now have purchased a camcorder tripod, and now this is the production of the life of Angeline Alfidi. Grandma, tell us, how old are you now, and when was your birthday?
my last birthday was September 20th, 1992.
And you were how old?
I was 94 years old. I was born on September 21st in 1898.
And where were you born?
I was born in Lucca nei Marsi in the province of Aquila in Italy.
And your father and mother's name?
My father's name was John Fanella, and my mother was Angelica Fanella. And they were also born in Lucca.
So how long did you live in Lucca before you came to the United States?
Well, I was a couple of years old when we landed in the United States.
And where did you land?
We came through New York at Ellis Island, like all the immigrants used to do at that time. And my father was living in Pittsburgh, in a town, McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh.
Do you remember, were you old enough to remember arriving at Ellis Island?
No.
So your first memory in the United States was
in McKees Rocks.
And what did your dad do when he came to the United States for work?
When he first arrived in the United States, in New York, he was picked out to work in the Hudson Tunnel as a laborer, digging out the tunnel. And then he got a chance to go to Pennsylvania, and he went there working in the coal mines.
When you mentioned the Hudson Tunnel, that's the Hudson River. Was he working in the Lincoln Tunnel, or do you remember the specific tunnel?
I don't remember. All I remember that he mentioned the Hudson Tunnel.
Okay. And then did he come over in advance of your mother and yourself?
Yes, he had been here at least 3 or 5 years before. And then he had come back to Italy to marry my mother. And then when I was born, he decided we should all be together.
And then you went to McKeesport, Pennsylvania?
McKees Rocks.
Oh, McKees Rock.
Yeah.
And
it's the suburb of Pittsburgh.
What was your first memory here in the United States?
Well, all I remember was I met this very nice neighborly family by the name of Simon, and I was about the age of Annie, so we've been friends all these years, and we still correspond.
And how old is Annie now?
Annie is in a retirement home in Pittsburgh, and she had her last birthday in April this year. She was 90 years old.
Oh, so she's a little younger than you are.
Just a few years.
Uh-huh. When you came to the United States, obviously you only spoke Italian, but you picked up English immediately, I suppose, and don't even remember that since you were so young.
I just went to the grammar school, the local schools, and of course I graduated from the American schools.
So how long did you live in Pennsylvania?
Well, in about 1905, there was a big boom in Chicago and my father had heard that they were building like mad in there, and there was this big building boom and lots of jobs available. So he came to Chicago, and I don't remember whether we all came together or he came first, but he settled in Chicago, and he was hired as a laborer carrying the bricks on his shoulder for the first Sears Roebuck big building at Arlington near Kedzie.
Now, did he go to Chicago before you and your mother?
I don't remember whether we all came together. I have an idea that we all moved together.
And where did you live when you first went to Chicago?
Well, the first thing that I remember, I don't remember if we lived at any other place. The first thing I remember was the house at Jefferson and Harrison Streets. We had the whole house, and he had opened a saloon there. Now, that was a good working class neighborhood at the time, and they had the original Western Electric only a block or two away, where they hired hundreds of people at that time. That was the first Western Electric. And there were all kinds of other shops and businesses and everything around there at the time. That was way back around 1907 or 8, around there. That's my first memory.
Your dad was very successful, I know from stories you've told us. How difficult was it for him to come to the United States? Did he ever talk about that?
Well, in the beginning, it took him 2 months to cross the ocean. They were in a little ship for 2 months before they landed in New York. And of course, they all came through Ellis Island at that time.
And your mother, do you recall her talking about the difficulties of moving to a new country and starting really fresh?
I think by the time we crossed the Atlantic, the service was much better, and the ships were better, and they were more frequent, of course, at that time. So there was quite a difference between my father coming here that looked like
Chicago really was your home for most all of your life.
From the beginning, yes. I remember a little bit of McKees Rocks, but not too much. We lived on a house that was on a hill, and I remember that in the summertime we'd go up the hill and we'd go looking for asparagus.
In Chicago?
In McKees Rocks.
Oh, in McKees Rock. Was that just growing wild or what?
I guess so.
But now in Chicago, what do you recall early on that was your most memorable experience at a young age in Chicago?
Well, in the beginning there was nothing much. I went to school, and my mother got a nice neighbor girl to bring me to the school, and the first year she used to give her 25 cents a week to make sure that I got there safely.
Were you a good student?
Fairly good. I wasn't a big star, but I was fairly good.
I think you're being modest. I understand at one time you had a little trouble with some algebra. What's that all about?
Oh, well, we had gone to Italy, and we had come back in the early part of December, and I'd missed those previous months. I was in my 8th year of school. I was supposed to graduate in June. So the other subjects were okay, but I just couldn't get the algebra part. I had missed the first lessons. So there was a very nice teacher, and one day I told her how difficult I couldn't get the gist of the algebra, and I just couldn't make it out. It didn't make sense. So she was good enough to keep me after school for a couple weeks, and we started from the very beginning of the algebra lessons. And then I got to understand what it was all about. And after that, it was no problem.
Well, tell us about being at home, and I'm sure you were a model child. Did you ever get in any trouble?
Oh, did I get into trouble? What a laugh.
You want to tell us about a case or two where you got out of
Well, you
line?
know, in those days, everything was so cheap. For 5 cents, you'd get a big schooner of beer. And then my father and mother used to have a choice of sausages and different cuts on the side table there where the customers could help themselves to a sandwich while they were having a big schooner of beer. And it only cost a nickel, too. So we used to have those every day. She'd put out these different cuts of salami and other things, you know, for the customers. Well, we had a family across the street of 7 children, and their mother had died when the last baby was born, and they were always hungry, the poor things. So I had gotten acquainted with them, and this one day I thought, well, I'd bring a few of those nice goodies to them. So I had a blouse that had an open front, and I stuffed them by the handfuls. I put them in that blouse and snuck out. And I went across the street and emptied out that blouse with all the sandwich meats in it. When I got back, my mother was waiting at the door. Now, where do you think you're going? She said. It's so funny when I think of it. Well, anyhow, I got a good whipping. And I remembered that for a long time. I couldn't sit down very comfortably.
How did she know that you'd taken it?
Well, there was only one around, that was me.
There was nobody to blame, huh?
No.
What your father, I understand, was very generous. How did he help the local people?
Well, in those days, everybody helped each other. And every time there'd be an immigrant coming over from Italy, whether they were recommended by somebody or what, but they always seemed to land at my father's place. And it became known as John's place. So we used to get all these newcomers, and they'd come with nothing but their clothes on and no money, of course, all looking for a job and for a new settlement. And my father was very generous. He would keep them until they found a job, and many times he helped them find a job. So it was very, very nice.
Was your mother? She worked in the bar and the saloon too.
Yes, and she helped him with everything.
And you lived above the saloon?
We had our living rooms were above the saloon.
Uh-huh.
It was a great big sprawling square building, and the living quarters are upstairs and the saloon was downstairs.
So the saloon was drinks and sandwiches and
In tables and
snack.
sitting around. They would sit around and play cards sometimes.
It was a restaurant.
What did a schooner of beer cost? 5 cents?
5 cents for a big schooner.
What did a sandwich cost?
It was about at least 12 ounces of beer.
And a sandwich cost what?
Nothing. They were free.
They were free. What? How long did your father and mother have that place?
Well, from what I remember, that was the first thing I remember when we went to Chicago. And they must have been working there a couple years before I became aware of everything.
And the location was?
On Harrison and Jefferson.
And how long did they have that?
Oh, they had it for years. at least until about 1912.
Then after that, where did you move?
Well, before 1912, after about 1910, they had the city was planning to build the Union Station in Chicago on Adams and Jackson and Clinton and in that neighborhood. And they had been buying up all these little old houses, and the people were moving away from the neighborhood. And by 1912, a lot of houses had been demolished, and it was just barren. You know, only the big buildings like the Edison plant and a couple other big buildings had been left standing. So my father had a chance to buy. We met some friends that lived in South Oak Park. At that time, it wasn't incorporated, but is now part of Berwyn. And it was just south of Roosevelt Road. So through these friends, we bought a little house on Oak Park Avenue, a 2-story house, and it had 2 apartments, and we only paid $3,600 for it.
And what did your father do for a living then?
He was still in the saloon business.
At the former location or a new location?
Yes, always at that location.
And your mother and you, I know, traveled a lot. When was your first trip back to Italy?
Well, that was about 1912, after we had moved to Berwyn. And my mother's parents had been writing that her father hadn't been feeling well. So we went. It was towards the fall when we went.
So you were 12 or 13, somewhere in there?
I was in my 8th grade at grammar school. That grammar school has been torn down years ago. And that's when I came back in December, and then I couldn't understand the algebra. But then I did graduate in June with the others.
Now your father, he stayed and ran the business?
He still had the saloon business.
But he stayed and ran the business
Oh yeah.
when you and your mother went to Europe?
Yeah, he had my cousin. I had a cousin came in from Italy who was practically living with us, and he was helping my father in the saloon.
So how long were you in Italy on that trip?
Just a short trip. It was 3 or 4 months.
On your return, then you were about to start high school.
Well,
Where did
after
you
I
go?
graduated from McKinley, the name of the school was McKinley. After I graduated from there, I went to the high school, the McKinley High School, that was located at Hoyne and Adams and Jackson on the west side of Chicago, farther out. But we were living in Berwyn at that time. And in order to go to that school, I used my father's business address to entitle me to go to that school. Otherwise, I would have had to go to the Oak Park High, which was miles away near Lake Street, and I would have had to take the surface car all the way around to on the border of Oak Park and Forest Park, way up to Lake Street. It would have been terrible, impossible. So I went to the McKinley High School.
And what was the name of your grade school that you went to?
Dore School, D-O-R-E. It had been built in the 1880s. It was an old school with the old fire escape on one side. And it was still standing when we moved, but shortly after that it was torn down.
And in high school, you finished high school?
I finished high school in 3.5 years and graduated in June. Let's see, that would be 1913 and 1917. And then I went 1 full year to business school in the Chicago Loop, the Bryant School of Business. It was well known at that time, and I took 6 months of shorthand and 6 months of bookkeeping, which I never used.
You took typing?
Oh, of course, that was with the shorthand.
How many words a minute did you type?
Well, at that time I only passed with the passing grades, but later on, when I got to be efficient, I was the top stenographer at Ryerson.
Okay, we're going to stop. Did you have any jobs before Ryerson?
Oh, of course. My first job was with Charles A. Stevens on State Street near Madison. And I had answered an ad, and they hired me, and I had to work from 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening, 7 days a week. So they only gave me $7. That was $1 a day. A friend of mine suggested another job, and the next Monday I went to apply for that, and I was hired right then and there. And I started with Motor Age, which was a publishing company for automobiles, and they were located in the Mallers building on Madison and Wabash on the upper floor. I stayed with them for quite a few years.
Now, how much money were you making a week when you started with them?
I started at $10 a week, but after 2 months, they gave me a raise because I had learned to use the dictaphone. And then later on, I helped them do the proofreading for their scripts before they went to the printers, and I got $2 more, so I was making $16 a week, and that was very good pay in those days.
What did you do with all of that money?
I saved it, of course.
Did you make any big purchases?
Well, then after by the end of 1919, I had decided we could buy a car. And we were living in a 6-apartment building on the near west side that was owned by a very dear friend, Mrs. Wolfe. We became very good friends. So we decided I would buy with the help of my boss and other co-workers, they suggested I buy a Rio, which was in those days a very well-built car. So I bought that and paid around $1,800 for it. I only had 3 lessons in order to drive. In those days, you didn't have to get a driver's license or anything. I was the owner of the car, and I got 3 lessons. You learn how to start and go forward. The next lesson was how to back up. The next lesson was how to park. So that was my lesson. Anyhow, I learned to drive, and it was quite a sight driving down the street and people staring at me because they couldn't believe that a woman would be driving a car in those days. Anyhow, we had to keep the car. At that time, we lived in a 6-apartment building on the near west side at Arthington and near Crawford. And so we had to get a garage to keep it in, and we found space in a big commercial garage on Harrison Street, fronting on Harrison Street. So that was 1919. In 1920, it was around January. The middle of winter was very cold winter, and one night the furnace blew up and the whole garage was demolished to ashes. There was nothing left of any of those cars. But I got my $2,000 insurance on the car, and pretty soon my mother and I decided we had to spend it on a trip.
Let me ask you, before we talk about the trip, did you have to have a driver's license in those days?
No, not in those days. You owned the car and you drove it. We didn't have to take any driver's tests or anything. You just drove.
Did your father or mother ever learn to drive?
No, they didn't, but one day I was taking one lovely day in the summer, I was taking my father and his cronies for a ride, and I was the only girl in the car, and we were going through Garfield Park. And we were all talking, and I was having a great visit, and I wasn't paying much attention to the speeding limit. We were in Garfield Park, and the speeding limit was 25 miles. So I hadn't seen it, and I was going along. We were laughing and joking, and pretty soon the policeman comes along on the motorcycle. "Hey, young lady, where do you think you're going?" I was stunned because I hadn't been paying attention. And I said, "Well, we're all out for a ride, just having a nice time here." And he said, "Well, you know, you're going 25 miles, 40 miles in a 25-mile zone." And I said, "No, I didn't notice it. We were just having a great laugh around here." And he said, "Who's these, all these guys?" I said, "That's my father, and those other guys are his buddies." So
What did your father say?
he just sat there, and he was always smoking a stogie. And so the guy said, "Well, I'll have to take your name." So I gave him my name, and he said, "You're Italian." I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, you know, did you ever get a ticket before?" "No." I said, "This is my first." He said, "Well, you know what? I'm married to a nice Italian girl, and inasmuch as you're all out for a family outing, I'll let you go." And so he never did give me a ticket.
Did you ever get stopped again in that car?
Well, not in that car. I didn't keep it long enough to get stopped, but I did have others. So,
How many passenger car was that?
5-passenger.
That was really quite a car. I know I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, and it had, then one day we were caught in the rain, and it had those isinglasses on there, because in those days they didn't have the cars like, you had to put them all on. And here it started to rain. I was putting the isinglasses on. Before I got through, I was drenched from the rain. So it didn't do me much good. By the time I had them on, it stopped raining.
So after you got your insurance money,
Yeah, we had $2,000, and my mother-in-law always found a place to put it.
I think you did quite well. You paid $1,800 for the car, and then
Got
lost it,
2,000
and you got
insurance.
$2,000.
That was okay.
That's pretty good.
But I was lucky to have the insurance,
Now,
because one of our one of the neighbors in the next space next to me at the garage had a new Lincoln, and he didn't have insurance, and he lost the Lincoln and everything.
so you took the money and went to Europe.
Yeah, we were gone for 9 months. In 1922 we went. We took a ship from New York to London, and then we went all through France and Belgium and part of Austria, and came back into northern Italy there, Yugoslavia, and into Italy, and we were gone 9 full months. We really had a time.
Were your grandparents on your mother and father's side still alive then?
Yeah, the grandparents were still there, but they were pretty old. And we were very glad to see them again, too, because they were pretty old then. I think my mother's father died shortly after that.
I understand that you met a very nice gentleman on this trip.
Not in Oh, I met a lot of people. I met some guy from Naples, and he's supposed to be a prince. And he thought, oh, well, she's just a little American girl. What does she know about history? So he started to talk about history and ancient history and the Greeks and everything. Boy, I gave him so many answers, he quit asking.
So when you came back, I bet your dad was glad to see you after being gone 9
He sure
months.
was. When we came back, we invited my girlfriends to come over, and we didn't have any, we still had them. When we came back, my father had already started the grocery store. He had to give up the saloon because Prohibition came in. And so he got a little place up on That was also on Harrison Street near Oakley. It was a three-apartment building. A three-story building. And there was an empty store in the corner. So my father had rented that. And we came back, and we didn't have much furniture. My girlfriends came to see me one night, so my mother made spaghetti dinner, and we served it on the orange crates. We used the orange crates as tables. We had the dishes, but we didn't have much furniture. Anyhow, we all had a great visit.
Your father had a burglary loss. What location, what store was
That
that?
was a saloon. When Prohibition, before Prohibition, around 1918, I think Prohibition had come in, and so they had burglarized his place, and they took everything they could get, all the liquor and everything they could lay their hands on. Cigarettes, we used to have cigarettes in those days. Everything they could possibly steal, and they even stole the cash register, which was worth $300 or $400, and they found it a couple blocks away the next day in an alley.
Now, did your dad have insurance? Did he lose everything?
No, in
or-
those days they didn't have insurance.
So how did
For business.
he have the money to start up the next grocery store?
Well, he started up on what little cash he had in his pocket, I guess. There wasn't much around.
Now, when you came back from your trip in 1922, you had to go to work again. Where did you go to work?
1922, that's when I had quit motor age, and I found a job at Joseph T. Ryerson's. That's a great big steel company in Chicago. And they were not too far away. They were located on Western Avenue and around 14th Street. And I could walk there. I didn't take the car unless it was raining, the bus unless it was raining or something. I would use the Western Avenue streetcar and get off at 14th Street and walk to the office. They had a great big office there, but it was sort of out of the way in an industrial neighborhood. So I went to work at Ryerson in the stenographic department, and I met a very dear friend. Very dear friend. Well, I met a lot of other friends, but she was the office manager, and we became very close friends.
So how long did you work at Ryerson?
I think I worked there until 1928, around there. 1928 or 29.
Do you remember how much money you were making?
1928, because we took another trip in 1928.
Do you remember how much money you were making at Ryerson in 28?
At that time, when I quit Ryerson, I was making $37 a week. In those days, that was good money.
And what type of work were you doing?
Well, I was doing mostly dictaphone work, and it was very technical. I worked for a famous meteorologist by the name of Mr. Van Dyke. And he was very well known because he knew the combination of the metal alloys. And it was very important that his specifications were always correct. So I became his favorite secretary, and I did all his work for about 3 or 4 years.
What would you say about women's rights in the workplace in those days?
Oh, I had no problem. I always had everybody's respect, because I didn't allow any familiarity with anyone. I didn't ever go without. I never went with anybody in the office. I had a lot of friends and boyfriends, and we used to have wonderful parties and stuff, but I never associated with the working people.
Well, you mentioned you worked there till 1928, and then you went back to Europe.
Yeah, we went to Europe again.
Tell us about that trip.
Oh, that was a fabulous trip. That's when I met Grandpa.
You and Grandma?
My mother and I, we were like sisters. We went everywhere. We were like sisters, two sisters, and we always went together.
So how did you meet Luca?
Well, that's it. We had gone for the summer, most of the summer. And then we were going to go to Lourdes that year. Now, that was in the summer months, and then we went to Lourdes in September, the first part of September. We had gone by ship from New York to Naples, and it happened that, well, that was after that, but so we went by ship, and we just went more or less visiting around and everything. We had already been to northern Italy and all the big cities on the previous trip, so we just went visiting for a couple of months.
Do you
And
remember?
I was at a reception, at a christening in our hometown in Luco. They had this big, fabulous christening party, and we were there, and all kinds of other people were there, and that's when I was introduced to Mr. Alfidi. Well, it was like everything else, just an introduction. So I didn't pay much attention, but we were going to go to Lourdes. My mother and his mother had been playmates when they were little, because they lived in the same neighborhood. But of course my mother had come to America for all those years. They hadn't been close for many years. But when we went back, she invited us over for dinner. And when we went for dinner, we happened to mention that we were going to Lourdes in a day or two. So we went to the hotel in Rome to where the group met. And while we were at the hotel, Mr. Alfidi comes in and he talks to my mother.
Now this is Grandpa when you say
That was Grandpa, yeah.
Mr. Alfidi.
And so, yeah, the bellboy came to our door. He said, "There's a young man to see you, miss, to miss." And I said, "Well, there's nobody to see me. It must be my mother." So I called my mother, and she went and talked to him. And he had come to see, he said he'd like to write to me that he would like to see if we could get together, and he was thinking of marriage ultimately. That's what they did in those days. So I paid no attention, and the next day we went to Lourdes, and we were gone for over a week. By the time we came back, they had a big birthday party over at one of Luca's aunts was visiting in his mother's house, and they had a party, and we were invited. It was wonderful.
What was your first reaction to Grandpa?
Nothing much, just another guy.
And what did he said he was going to write? Did he in fact write to you after you came back to the United States?
Yeah, he'd asked my mother if it was okay if we could write. And I said, sure, why not, you know. So after we came back, he started writing, and it was a letter every single week. I'd get a letter from him. And of course, little by little, he told me that his intentions were to get married, because now in the meantime, when we came back home that winter, when we came back home, his mother it was during their harvest, and they had a lot of lands, and that was the harvest time, and in Italy they gather up the grapes before they put them in through the wine process. So she had been out with the tenants, and they were gathering the grapes, and somehow or other she had a heart attack, and she died suddenly. And he had already gone to Rome because he was attending law school. So they called him by phone, and he had to come back And when he came back, of course, she had already died, had to go, and the funeral and everything. That was very devastating to Pa because he was taking his law exams at that time. Anyhow, after that, they had to close up the house and everything, and he didn't want to go back to the house because it was painful for him, so he went to live in the next town with his sister Aida.
How old was,
Grandpa at that time was 28.
and his mother was how old when she
Well,
died?
she was somewhere in her 60s, but she had this heart attack and passed on very fast. So Grandpa he got through with his exams, and he didn't know what to do with himself, so he asked if it would be okay if we got married, because he didn't want to be in the house alone, and he had to make up his mind to get settled and so on and so forth. So I said okay, and we established the next September in 1930 as the wedding day. That we would get married in September.
And
on
you were,
September 20th. And so in 1930, I go back to Italy again, and we were married on the 20th of September, and I've been using that instead of my birthday because that was a dual ceremony, and so I've been using that ever since. For my birthday, I didn't want to explain, it was my birthday and my wedding day,
so
and I've had it for many years.
so you were married on September 20th.
20th,
Your
1930.
birthday is September 21st, but
Yeah,
you
that's
decided to combine the dates.
Right, and September 20th became the date.
And did anyone ever question that, or you just decided to do it?
No, nobody ever questioned. What was the difference of 24 hours?
When you got married then, how long did you and Pa stay in Italy?
In Lucco. Well, my good friend Mrs. Wolf came from America to be with us. She came for the wedding, and she came on the trip with us. So when we arrived in Naples, in the month of August, the early part of August, Pa's sister and brother-in-law and a friend of theirs, and the three of them, they met us at the dock. When the boat docked, they were there waiting for us. So then, of course, we introduced each other and Mrs. Wolf. And Mrs. Wolf stayed for the wedding. Then after that, she went to Oberammergau. She was going to go to Oberammergau that year. Then she came back alone. But we had the wedding, then we went on our honeymoon, Lucy and I, and we went all over northern Italy and Venice and everything, and came back in about a week or 10 days. And shortly after that, right after Christmas, my mother went home. She came back to the United States.
How many people do you remember were at your wedding?
Oh, there was a host of people because all his relatives, he had 5 sisters, and they had all been married, and their children, just a host of everybody was there. And all the other relatives.
And of course your father gave you away.
My father, poor guy, was not there because he still had the remnants of the saloon, and he was going into the grocery business. He had given up the saloon in that summer because of wait a minute. That was way before. My father had the grocery store in those days.
So who gave you away?
Well, we had an uncle there that gave my mother's brother. He gave me away.
Oh, that's nice. And how about you went on your honeymoon?
We went on our honeymoon. We went all over northern Italy. We met a lot of his relatives that lived in there, in the different towns in northern Italy and in Turin and Milan.
And then you lived in,
We went back to live in Lucco in his family home.
how long did you live there?
Well, we lived there until after Ralph was born. And when we came to, then we rented that house and we came to the United States, and that was the end of that.
Your parents wanted you to come back, of course.
Oh, yes. And they were right in the middle of the bad, hard times then.
So
we came back.
You came back in about 1932?
Ralph was born in 1932, and we came back towards the first part of winter. It was cold when we came back.
Now, those were very difficult times
They were
in the United States.
very
and
bad.
Grandpa did not speak English at that time, or very little?
No, but he knew very little. But then he had to go to school to learn English. And he went to the Crane High School, which was only a couple blocks away from the store, which was very fortunate.
That must have been very difficult for him.
Well, it was, but then the World's Fair, we started to work on the Chicago World's Fair, and that was an inspiration. And after that, he got to know the Italian consulate very well. They became very good friends. So the city was working on the famous Chicago World's Fair of 1933 and 34. So that helped a lot because Grandpa was very disappointed with finding the economic conditions in America so bad compared to what was in Italy. They had no idea that it would be so bad. So he got the consul was instrumental in getting him a position at the World's Fair as manager of the book exhibit. And they had a lot of antique books from the Vatican and old manuscripts that were very, very precious. And Grandpa was put in complete charge of that at the World's Fair in the Italian Pavilion. And he met a lot of influential people while he was there in charge. He enjoyed that work very much.
Now, Grandpa went to school just to concentrate on English because he was educated in Italy.
Oh yeah, he spoke French and also Greek pretty well. He had studied ancient Greek, but he spoke French fluently. So that helped him in learning the English. It was no problem.
When he first came over, he must have had serious reservations about coming to the United States. And
it was terrible. In those days, we came on the 20th century, and we went through all these little towns with those little broken down shanties and old decrepit houses along the way. And when we got into Chicago at 63rd Street, we had to go through the south side from 63rd to the station, and all those old buildings on the south side were awful. And he said, "My God, can this be America?"
Well, it had to be very difficult because his parents had considerable amount of money. And the contrast.
Well educated. In his family, they had all professionals, lawyers and judges, all professionals. And his in-laws were all professionals too. You know, the ones that married the sisters there, they were all in high positions in the government, the Italian government.
Now, how long were you back in the States before Jeanette was born?
Oh, well, Jeanette was born in December of 34.
1933.
33,
Right.
That's right, 1933. We were living up there above the store. That was the grocery store then. And we were living on the 3rd floor and had a big 6-room apartment. But I had to climb all those steps. And before Jeanette was born, I had taken her out. I had gone to take Ralph out and was taking Ralph out was very cold. And it was in the middle of December, and I just could hardly go up those steps. It was awful, 3 flights of steps. But anyhow, on the 16th of December, Jeanette was born, 1933.
I believe she was born at home, and who delivered her?
Yeah, we had everything ready to go to the hospital. I had already paid my fee at the hospital nearby, and everything was in a basket, all the gauzes and disinfectants and everything else. So in the middle of the morning, I had gotten up to go to the bathroom, and while I was in the bathroom, I had a terrible pain in the middle of my back, and that was it. So I yelled for Grandpa and Grandma, anybody to come and help me, and they carried me to the bed, and that was when Jeanette was born.
And I'm sure that Grandpa was a picture of composure, was he not?
He was so fuddled up he didn't know where the basket was, and it was right next to the bed. He didn't know where anything was. Fortunately, my mother had more presence of mind. She takes charge, and you'd think she was an accomplished nurse, the way she handled it. Pretty soon, here comes the little whacking, crying baby, and everything was fine. But boy, what a few minutes. It was awful. Now that's it.
Mother, shortly after, now we have both Ralph and Jeanette. And Jeanette was born in the year of the...
Pa met this fella at the World's Fair who was the architect for the Union Station.
Mother, now you have 2 children. You have Ralph and Jeanette. And it's 1933. Tell us about the Chicago World's Fair.
The Chicago World's Fair was in 1933, and they held it over for 1934. And Pa got a job as the manager of the book exhibit in the World's Fair, the Italian Pavilion. So he was in charge of all these precious editions from the Vatican and old copies of books.
So how long did he work at the World's Fair?
Well, he worked there the first year, and he worked there the second year, until it closed. That was about 2 years.
What did he do after it closed? I understand he went to the Chicago Surface Lines.
Well, he had met, he knew the consul at that time very well, the Italian consul in Chicago, but he had met also the architect for the Union Station, and he was very influential with the Chicago Surface Line. So after Pa's work was finished at the Italian Pavilion at the World's Fair, he got a job as inspector, rail inspector for the surface lines for the city of Chicago and suburbs. At that time they had the streetcars on all the main streets, and the rails had to be inspected that they were in good condition and not broken to prevent accidents. So he went all over the city examining these rail lines and had to report them every night when he at his main office.
Did he make pretty good money doing that?
Well, it was enough to keep us going. It wasn't anything special, but it was a good job, and he enjoyed it, and he got to know the whole city of Chicago.
Now, at this point, you've been in the United States about 2 years. How was Grandpa's English?
Well, Grandpa had gone to in the meantime, he had gone to the Crane High School, which is only about 3 or 4 blocks from where we were living, and he took English there at night course, and he did very, very well. In 6 months, he spoke English very well, because he knew other languages, and it came in very handy for him.
What other languages did he know?
Well, he was fluent in French, and he had studied Greek and, of course, Latin.
So, I understand in 1934, Jeanette got sick. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was in the spring, and a friend, the woman that lived downstairs, had gone to visit somebody she knew, and they had scarlet fever. And when she came home, she grabbed Jeanette and kissed her and everything. The first thing we knew, Jeanette had a high fever the next day, and we called the doctor, and he said she had gotten the scarlet fever from this woman. She had to be isolated. So we had to prepare the back rooms of our 6-room apartment, and we got a maid to take care of her. Mm-hmm. The maid was a German woman, and she had lost a son. And when she got to care for Jeanette, she was just very happy, because she loved Jeanette like her own and took very good care of her.
What was her name?
Anna.
So how long
She stayed with us 3 or 4 years.
So how long was Jan in the back quarantine?
Oh, at least 6 months or more.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And then when was Mary born?
Mary was born in April of the next year. Let's see, Jenny was a year and a half old, and then Mary was born.
April 8th, 1935.
April 8th.
1935.
1935, that's right.
So where were you living then?
Well, we were living with my parents on Harrison Street near Oakley Boulevard.
Uh-huh.
But then with the kids getting bigger and they needed more space, we had to look for another place. So we found a comfortable apartment, also 6 rooms, on Congress Street near 42nd 100. And we had both a back porch and front porch, and the kids could come and go, and we moved there. So we lived there for a while.
And I'm sure that Grandpa hated to move out and leave Great-Grandma behind. Is that right?
Well, of course, my father missed me, but I continued to work for him. I used to take the Harrison Street car, which was very convenient, and stop right there near the store. So I kept on until my father got sick. My father got an attack of cirrhosis of the liver, because he used to smoke and drink a lot, comfortably. And he was in the hospital for a while, and then after he was let out and didn't use the drinks and the smoking so much, he got better for about a summer or 2, but then he got another attack, and this was much more severe, and he went to the hospital and never recovered. And so he passed away in 1943, I believe.
Now tell me, about that time or a little before, didn't Grandpa go to work for a radio radio station?
No, it was, he was still working for the surface lines at that time. It was after we moved to Congress Street that he got, he had known the owner of the Italian Hour in Chicago in those days, and the owner was an older gentleman, and then after a couple years he decided to retire. So then Grandpa bought his the station rights from him, and he took over the radio station after he got through with the surface lines job.
Do you remember listening to Grandpa on the radio, and do the children remember listening to it?
Yeah, we used to listen to it all the time because I checked up on his, you know, his presentation, and we always listened every night.
So how many days a week was he on the air?
Every night.
Oh, how long was the program?
The program lasted about an hour.
And I bet he was very good, wasn't he?
He was very good. He was the only one that spoke perfect Italian language.
Did they have a call-in show? Could people call in and ask him questions?
Not at that time, no. It was a straight program.
And then what did Grandpa do, or how long was he on the radio program, and what did he do after that?
Well, then the war started. After, let's see, that was the war started, and we were living on Congress Street, and he had to give up the radio hour, and so in order to avoid active service, he was given the choice of going to work at the war plant. So he went to work for the war plant on North Avenue. It was, at that time, it was a Buick war plant, and it was on the north side of Chicago. And we lived way down on Congress Street, so it was sort of inconvenient. And then later on, the plant opened, the Ford plant opened at 75th and Cicero, so he was able to transfer over there, and by transferring on the south side, we had to look for some place on the south side to live. So we happened to see an advertisement in the paper about 5 acres for sale with a nice home in it, and we went to look at it, and we liked it very much. And so the next spring we bought it, and that's where we moved to Crestwood. It was Crestwood at that time, just the outside limits of Midlothian, and that's where we moved on the south side.
Now, Ralph and Jan went to school where?
At St. Angela's, which was just convenient, about 3 blocks from the house where we had the acres, and they had a great time there. They enjoyed themselves very much. Lots of space, and
I'm going to go back to the time of your father's death and tell us about the children going to Ringwood, New Jersey.
Oh, at the time that, well, the second time that my dad got seriously ill, he was confined to the hospital. And that spring, a very dear friend of ours, Mother Veronica, who was she was a sister in the St. Francis Order. We had met her in Colorado years before, and so she came to visit us, and it was at the time when my father was very sick and he had passed away, and I didn't know what to do with the children. So she suggested that she would take them with her to New Jersey. And that summer they spent the whole summer here in Ringwood, New Jersey at a summer camp. And that was wonderful because it relieved us of worrying about the children and their welfare. And in the meantime, we disposed of the store and everything in it so that my mother wouldn't have to keep it up alone.
Was it before the children went to Ringwood or after that Ralph got the whooping cough?
Well, I think the whooping cough came after, and then he gave it to all the children, and we all had the whooping cough, including me. So I was quarantined with him. That was before we moved to Crestwood.
And so what was the outcome of that?
Well, we had started Ralph in the Chicago school on Springfield and near Crawford and Harrison, but there was a terrible epidemic of whooping cough, and half of the children didn't go to school, so it was so severe that we decided to keep him over and let him start school with Jeanette the next fall. That's what we did. So in the fall, then both children started school at St. Angela's, where we were living on Massasoit.
Tell me, it was sometime after that, 1941, December 7th, that Pearl Harbor was bombed.
That's right.
Do you remember what you were doing and what was your reaction?
Well, we knew right away that I would have to do something in the military somehow. So that's when he got the job at Buick. He had to give up his radio hour at that time, and he had to get a job in a war plant, which was Buick at that time. That was the first one. And then later on, he went to the one at 75th and Cicero, the Ford plant. Then after we moved to Crestwood, they opened up the other one, the automotive plant in LaGrange, Illinois, and he was able to get a ride from our neighbors. Several of our neighbors worked there, so he got a ride over there. He ultimately finished his service at the automotive plant in LaGrange.
So, what was your memory of the children and their school years? Were they all good students?
Yeah, they enjoyed school very much, and they loved the school in Midlothian, St. Angela's. And they made a lot of friends, and they were happy there. After they graduated from Midlothian, they went to the high school at the high school in Harvey, Illinois.
Thornton High School.
Thornton High School. At that time, it was a very good, well-accredited high school. So they went through 4 years of that. And then we were still living, we had moved to Midlothian. By that time, we were living just across from the church. We were right on 147th Street. And all the kids in the neighborhood, they knew where our address was because they always stopped in.
So when did you move to Midlothian? What year?
Oh, it was a couple of years after we had moved to Crestwood. I think about 3 or 4 years after, but it was before they graduated from St. Angela and before they went to high school. So it made it very convenient for us.
So all the time that Grandpa was working, you worked a good deal of the time yourself, did you not?
Oh, yes, sure. I used to work downtown in Chicago. I was working at Lumberman's Credit most of the time when we lived in Midlothian. And then, after the children were through with school, we decided to move to Blue Island. By that time, they'd all gone to college, most of them. Jeanette had gone to New Mexico, and Ralph had gone to Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And Mary had only 1 year, and then after that 1 year, she joined college too, and she went to Eastern Illinois. So when the children went to college, we moved to Blue Island.
I want to take you back to Midlothian and have us tell you about the time you were going to work, and you, well, you know the story, so you tell it.
Well, it was a terrible snowy day. I had met these wonderful neighbors who lived on Cicero Avenue, and they had to pass our house to go to the railroad station. So this one morning we had had a big snowfall the night before, and it was still snowing when they pulled up in, a car pulled up in front of our house, and I thought it was the Saxbys. And instead of that was a complete stranger who had stopped to wipe off the snow from his windshield. So I just got in the car because that's what I used to do with the Saxbys, get in the car. And they would drive me to the station, which was about 3 blocks away. And this man, then suddenly I realized I was in the wrong car, and the man said, "Well, what can I do for you?" And I told him, I said, "I thought you were my friends picking me up to take me to the station." So we both had a good laugh over it, and he stopped at the station to let me off. But that was so funny.
Was he shocked?
Well, I just as shocked as I was to find that I had gone in the wrong car.
I think you told us one time about going to work when you were not completely dressed. Tell us that story.
Oh, that was long ago. We lived in Oak Park at that time, and I used to just put an old skirt on, you know, to get and comb my hair. I had long hair in those days, and until I got fully dressed. So this one morning, I forgot. I was in a hurry, so I put my coat on, and I had the wrong skirt, an old skirt that I wore only around the house. So by the time I got on the elevator, I used to take the elevator at that time to go downtown. I happened to look and see, and I got off at the next station, went back home and changed clothes. I tell you, that was funny.
Now, you were starting to tell us about moving to Blue Island. What? Tell us about that and your business that you started there.
Well, as I said, the children were all in college, and Grandpa had the idea that he was going to go in business. So he had after the war service, after the pro-war plants were cutting down, he decided he was going to go in the travel business. So at first he got a desk in a real estate office, which was near the shopping center, near the bank, and that was fine. So in about a few months, there was a sign on a house on Western Avenue for sale. The house was a residence, of course, and it was not too far away. It was near 119th Street. So I called the lady up, and I went to look at it, and it was a nice, old, comfortable house. But being on Western Avenue gave us the opportunity to be on a business street. So I put my house up for sale in Midlothian, and with the money from that house, we bought the one in Blue Island. Mm-hmm. And so we moved to Blue Island then, while the kids were all in college, and Pa and I were alone. And he kept his office in the real estate office until we got settled. And we put in we took the front porch off and put made it into a nice office on the ground floor. And that's how we started the travel business.
And you actually had about 3 travel agencies, didn't you, or 4 at different locations?
Well, that was the first one, and we were there a long time. I think we were there at least 15 years. And then the bank wanted to buy us out, so they did. And that was in the around 1960 or so. So somewhere around there. So we agreed to sell out to the bank. And then Pa started an agency in East Chicago, Indiana, with his friend who was also a banker in East Chicago, Indiana. And they started a travel agency over there. So then later on, when we sold all our, then we took a trip after we sold the business in Blue Island, Pa and I took a trip. We went to Italy. He thought he wanted to retire. But when we got there, it wasn't what we thought it would be. We missed the children, and living in Italy was not as convenient as what we had in America, and they would shut the heat off after 10 o'clock, and it wouldn't go on again until 5 o'clock in the morning, so you had to get used to that. And we didn't like it. So we came back here and set up our house again. We came back to Blue Island, got an apartment. And in the meantime, I forget what it was now.
You started an agency. You had one in Blue Island, one in East Chicago.
Yeah, the one was in East Chicago, belonged to his friend, Pa's friend, who had the bank, who owned the bank.
Then you started one in Harvey.
Well, the one in Harvey was another. Our friend, Mr. Arquilla, decided he would like to start it. His daughter-in-law and the children decided they wanted to go into the travel business. So we started that business, but really turned it over to the Arquillas. They took complete control after a while, after it was established.
And then you started another one.
Then, after several years, we moved to New Lenox, and of course we couldn't sit still, and we started another one in New Lenox.
Let me ask you if you remember the time that I called you and asked to speak to Pa and gave you a hard time about the ticket and then gave you my phone number. And as I remember, Pa was shaving, and you went in to tell him. Now, do you remember that end of that story?
Well, you and Jeanette were already married and living up in Vargas, when Mrs. Vargas' house. It was a little house then. You had a little apartment. And so you loved to tease Grandpa, and I would fall for everything, but he was quicker on the draw than I was. So I took the message. We were ready to go to church, and Pa was getting ready. I was all ready, and I answered the phone, and here comes this voice, somebody that was very upset about the wrong ticket. It had the wrong information. So I took the name and the telephone number and went back to Pa, who was shaving at that time. I said, "You got a message from some crank that wants to insist on speaking to you as soon as you can get to the phone." So he took the message and then went to the phone to call up. And as he dialed the number, he remembered that it was your number, and he had the biggest laugh in his life. He said, "For God's sake, that's Don's number." And I didn't remember that it was in my confusion. And we had the biggest laugh ever that you would pull such a joke on us.
Do you remember after that you came over to pick Jan and I up to go to church?
Yeah.
And we saw you coming down the street about a block away.
And I was still laughing.
Yeah.
We were still laughing.
So, tell me, describe Grandpa and tell us what you remember most fondly about him.
Well, Grandpa was he was good company, and he was a softy. He was very soft-hearted. So if anybody came along with a sob story, I remember during the World's Fair, he asked two of these people that used to work with him at the book exhibit, and he asked them over for dinner at our house. We were living on Congress Street at that time. And of course I prepared a dinner for the two. And before they left, they asked to borrow $100 so they could go back to Italy. And I didn't have any $100, so I arranged for my father. He was okay at that time. I asked for Pa to loan me the money so we could give it to these jerks. And when they got the money, they went back to Italy, but we never heard from them again. That's how soft Grandpa was.
And did you say anything to him about that?
Well, he couldn't say very much because he meant well, but he had more people coming over to the house that were half homeless and half destitute, and he'd have them over for dinner. His good friend, he would have them over. There's another guy who used to come over all the time, too. But anyhow, he meant well.
Did Grandpa like to travel a little bit?
Oh, goodness gracious. When we had the travel agency, he used to go to Italy at least 3 times a year. And of course his sister was living at the time, and they were very close. So he would see his sister more often than his sister who lived in Rome. And the family always used to say, well, you're in the right business. You come to visit more than we do among ourselves.
Tell us talk a little bit about Ralph and Jeanette and Mary, and just what are your fondest memories of each one of them?
Well, when we first moved to Crestwood, they had a ball. They had an old barn up there, and they used to jump from the loft onto a big hole, a dirt hole. One time we had gotten a couple loads of dirt for the soil cover, and I expected to have a garden in the back. So they had dumped this load of dirt in the front of this loft, and they managed to contrive jumping from the loft into this big hole where they'd put water in it as though it had been a swimming pool. And here they were all full of mud and everything, and they thought that was great fun.
Were they pretty good children, and did they get along well?
Oh yeah, they would pick on Mary a little bit because she was like the third wheel. But anyhow, they got along fine.
Who was the disciplinarian in your family? I suppose it was Grandpa.
Oh yeah. I think they were more afraid of me than they were of Grandpa. I would always threaten them when your father comes home, but I used my hands pretty liberally.
And did Grandpa discipline them when he got home?
Oh, sure. Like when one time Ralph decided he was going to go away. He was going to leave home. He was mad at somebody for something, and he decided he was going to go away. So he disappeared for a while, but when evening came, I found out that Grandpa had prepared a nice dinner for him, and he went up to the loft, and there was Ralph. He hadn't gone too far.
Were you living in Crestwood then?
Yeah, that was Crestwood.
Yeah. Well, now, Grandma, your birthday is September 20th, 1898, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's some confusion as to your birthday and the day you were married. And I don't believe they're the same day, but somehow they became the same day. Tell us about that.
Well, I was married on a Saturday, which was September 20th. And the next day was my birthday. So after I got married, I figured, why confuse everybody with my birthday and my marriage? So after that, my birthday became the same day I was married, and September 20th was the official date from then on.
But how do you justify that from a logical standpoint? You were married one day, and the next day was your birthday. Why did you combine them?
It was much easier. It left a lot of questions unanswered.
All right, let me ask you, at 94, and you're certainly in great shape, both mentally and physically, why don't you tell the listening audience, what is your secret to longevity?
Well, I think I was blessed with good health. That's the first thing. And then, of course, we eat a lot of fresh vegetables and fresh fruit. And that, I think, helps a lot in the physical good standing.
Did you enjoy cooking, and do you like to eat what you cook?
I sure do. I love everything that I cook. I enjoy cooking, and I enjoy eating the result.
Well, we have 1 minute left on this tape, so I would like for you just to say anything you want to wind up this segment of the show.
Okay, I would say that anyone blessed with good health has the greatest blessing of all. And taking care of that good health is up to the individual. And to eat good, wholesome food, and later on, like me now, I have to give up a lot of things I like sweets and stuff, and eliminate all the things that might cause trouble, like fats and too much sugar and alcohol and things. Avoid that and you'll be okay.
Do you ever drink any anisette?
I love anisette every once in a while, but now I have to give it up because it makes my blood pressure go up.
Now, finally, tell us, you broke your hip when you were 87. What did you think when you broke it, and how was your recovery?
Well, the recovery was wonderful. I didn't have any problems, but up until about 2 years ago, I was in perfect shape. And then everything started to happen. I lost a couple of my teeth, and right now I have to get new teeth, I got new glasses, and it's like pulling a string on a hem. Little by little, the whole thing falls apart, and that's it.
Well, this is the end of our tape, but I think that you've had the opportunity to view an incredible woman at 94 years of age. She really has it all together, and we're very, very fortunate to enjoy her. And Grandma, we all love you, and just wish you the very, very best.
I thank you. Thank you all.